Steep turns are one of the most difficult maneuvers to perform well. I struggled with them through my training, and I've seen countless students struggle with them since. You may be able to wrestle your way around to pass a check ride, but that doesn't mean they were smooth, consistent, and reliable. So today we're going to take the Luscombe up and look at what it actually takes to perform nice, clean steep turns. So let's get started.
All right, everyone, we got the Luscombe started. Checked our weather and NOTAMs. We've got slightly reduced visibility this morning. Probably not going to have the greatest horizon for this, but we should be good. We're still VFR. And NOTAMs are checked, and we're going to head out to the west here to get started. And here we go. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 77903 is departing. Runway 02, left turn out to the west, Wahoo. Okie dokie. Winds are calm this morning. A little humid. Not too bad. Final is clear. Alright, 02 identified. Don't see anyone on the grass. Crop dusters are out, so we gotta be careful. Okay, power's coming in. RPM, oil pressure, airspeed's alive. Tail's coming up. 50, 55, rotate. Pitching for 65. A lot of birds this morning. Head on a swivel. Okay, so we're gonna go take a look at steep turns. I'll put a timestamp in here so you know where to jump to if you just want to jump to the maneuvers. But we're climbing out here on upwind. We'll get to 300 feet below pattern altitude and make a turn to the left. Yep, it's hazy. Okay, engine's good, oil pressure, temperature's coming up. Climbing good. Make sure she's trimmed. Okay, there we go, we're trimmed. Might even be a little bit of a thermal inversion, potentially. The clouds. Seems like it's getting a little warmer, we'll see. Okay, there's 1900, clear left, turn left. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903, left crosswind, 02, Wahoo. Okay, so we're going to look at steep turns today. Steep turns are one of the more challenging maneuvers, especially for private pilots, but all the way up through ATP. Got to do them on the ATP check ride. Got to do them on the commercial check ride, right? And so they're a struggle, right? And the struggles go back to things we've already talked about before. Coordination, that's a big one, right? Visual flying skills, before instrument flying skills. And so we're going to look at some of those things today to help you maybe diagnose your own steep turns so that if you're struggling with them, you can clean them up. So the first thing, like I said, or worth talking about now, is visual versus instrument, right? Pretty much any time we're maneuvering the airplane, it's easier to do that visually than it is to do it on instruments. And I heard a story one time I thought was pretty funny. This student was learning how to fly, and she goes to take her check ride. And during the steep turn, she put her nose on the dash, leaned forward, put her nose on the dash, and then did the best steep turns the examiner had ever seen. And so what does that mean? It means that she had the sight picture dialed in to a T, right? And so, and what is sight picture? Sight picture is something else we've talked about before, and that is attitude, right? It's where the airplane is pointed. And so if you don't know where the airplane is pointed, good luck trying to get it to perform, right? Because as the old adage goes, pitch and power creates performance, right? So if we can't point the airplane to a very fine degree, then we're going to struggle to do any maneuver, but especially steep turns, right? So the first thing we need to look at is our sight picture and our performance. And on that note, I like to think of the left and the right steep turn as being completely different maneuvers. A left steep turn is maneuver A, and a right steep turn is maneuver B. They aren't the same thing, especially in a side-by-side airplane, propeller airplane. Now, if you were flying, I don't know, a T-38 with centerline thrust and jet engines, and you're sitting in the middle of the airplane, well then, yeah, steep turn left might be the same as steep turn right, just being a mirror image. But in terms of sight picture and propeller effects, no, they're completely different, right? So I would highly recommend that you don't do left, right when you're practicing, because you're switching between maneuvers, right? If you were trying to get good at power on stalls, you wouldn't do a power on stall and then a turn around a point, and then a power on stall and a turn around a point, right? You get my point. So, yeah, practice them in one direction, get it dialed in, then move to the other direction and get that one dialed in. And that's another thing. Students come to me and they will say something like, they were working with another instructor, or they had a past, they got their private and now they're working on their commercial or something. And they'll be like, I just don't get it. My left steep turn is good, but my right steep turn is terrible, or vice versa, right? And I immediately know, sight picture and propeller effects, right? And so we have to know how to counter those depending on the direction that we're going to go. Okay, so we're getting away from Wahoo here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're 4 fields to the west, which means or 4 roads to the west, which means we're 4 miles west. So we'll put a few more miles on here, and then we'll get started. So we got a little bit of a horizon out here, enough to the north, a little dark to the south. It should be good to the west, so we should have enough horizon to do this. And as I said, right, these are visual maneuvers, and you look at my panel, and we notice there's no attitude indicator, right? So how are we going to do this? How could we possibly do steep turns if we don't have an attitude indicator, right? Well, we actually do have an attitude indicator. I'll show it to you in just a second. But we really don't need it, right? Once we learn what 45 degrees looks like, we shouldn't actually need attitude indicators, right? But we do have one hiding right here. And here's our compass. And I know some of you have commented before about how dark the compass is, and it is dark. It's hard to read even now. It says 240 right now. But anywho, there's screws in the compass here, here, and here. And for all intents and purposes, those 2 screws right there, where my fingers are roughly at 45 degrees. Not perfectly, but pretty close. We also have these screws in the dash here and here, and they're roughly too, right? So you can look down and see, are these screws lined up with the horizon as we're going around? Or these screws? And they give you a rough idea of 45 degrees of bank. But if you're doing it in an airplane with no attitude indicator, it's going to be pretty hard for the examiner to tell you that you weren't exactly 45 degrees, right? So anywho, let's see how far we are now. Okay, there's west and 6. Okay, coming up on 7 miles. And here's the town of Prague. And we'll get to Prague and then we'll start maneuvering. Of course, we'll start with our clearing turns, and then we'll jump right into it. Right, so these are some of the things we're going to talk about. Also, we're going to look at isolating variables. Isolating variables. That's a mathematical term, right? And so if you're working with a function, right, you might have a function that has many variables in it, x, y, and z, right? And so we can think of a steep turn like a function with a bunch of variables, x, y, and z. And the problem is that when we're doing steep turns, a lot of people, they're letting x, y, and z all kind of bounce back and forth, right? Well, if you're trying to make the airplane behave, you can't have 3 things all affecting say, altitude at the same time, or you're going to be all over the place. And so we need to, what I call, lock variables. We need to lock them down, right? And so a lot of people, ooh, this makes me really angry. When people start using bank angle to control altitude, it's so frustrating. It's so wrong because you're changing too many variables at once, right? And the checkride standards imply that you're supposed to maintain the bank angle the whole time. So I get people, we're out there doing them, and they're rolling in 10 degrees, they're rolling out 10 degrees, and back and forth, and we're going up and down and all around, and it's really uncomfortable, and I don't think it meets the intent of what we want to do, which is just to make a nice, clean, steep turn, right? So let's start with some clearing turns here. We'll pick up our left wing. We're looking left, clear left, turning left. Oop. It has been a hot minute since I've been in the Luscombe, so we're going to have to warm our feet back up here. And we're looking around, looking around. Yeah, been busy in the jet, and the jet has a yaw damper, which makes this really easy. Yeah, rusty feet. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I just need to warm up. So let's do some steep turns. And we'll see what we see. Now I'm going to do these at full power, and that's very important because whenever you do steep turns, it's a performance maneuver. We need to know our performance numbers. And the first thing we need to find out is what is the fastest speed that we can do a steep turn at. And if we try to do a steep turn faster than that, we're going to fail, guaranteed. It will not work, right? So we're going to go full power. Going to roll in. Here we go. And let's start warming up. Okay, I got it over there. I got the ball in the middle. Okay, got the altitude locked in. A little shallow on the bank. Pitch wobble there. All right, and I'm just going to go around for a turn or two. And I'm going to let the airplane tell me for today what speed it can do it at. All right, I'm seeing 85 roughly. Okay, and 90-ish. Ooh, I'm in my own wake here. That complicates things. We'll talk about that in a minute here. Yeah, about 90, maybe 85. We'll roll out to the west, or to the east here. Okay, and then we'll do one to the right. Okay, and so if I try to do a steep turn at, say, right now the airplane's going 95, and I try to roll in and do it at 95, you can do it at 95, but you're going to be descending, right? You're not going to be able to hold altitude. So that's something I've seen before, is that people are entering the maneuver too fast, and they don't know what is the fastest that I can do a steep turn at, right? Okay, here we go to the right. Okay, there we go. Off the ball a little bit. Come on, there we go. Little climb, ease the back pressure, lower the pitch attitude. There we go. Okay, yep. Screws are about right. 87, slight climb. Yeah, 87 to 85. There we go. Okay, so I would guess that 80 would probably be the safest speed in the Luscombe here to do steep turns at. Why? Then I have just a tiny bit of performance left over if I need to climb, right? So, yeah, we would not want to do them right at 90, maybe even 85, because we would have no extra performance, right? So that's an important thing. If you're an instructor or you're trying to diagnose these yourself, you need to know what that is. Okay, so let's see, we're level here at 3,000. And let's talk about sight picture, right? So my my windscreen right now, it's a little dirty, right? There's some bugs on here. I didn't clean it last time. Shame on me, right? But they're actually a good thing for steep turns because they allow us to keep track of our pitch as we go. Right, we're here in level flight. We can obviously see pitch, right? Nose up, nose down. It's harder to see in a steep turn because you've got to the left and you've got to the right. And so it's helpful, dare I say, to have a few little specks on the windscreen. And when you're doing the steep turn and you're holding your head still, you might find a bug or a scratch or, you know, a mark on the cowling or some point on the cowling or the dash to help you lock on and become a reference on the horizon. And so let's say you got a little, like this little bug right here, was for the right steep turn was just about perfect. It was sitting right on the horizon, right? And so that then becomes my pitch reference. And so if that bug drops below the horizon, I've got the nose down. If it goes above the horizon, I'm climbing, right? So it's helpful to have a spot like that, or a spot on the dash to make that work. So let's see what ugly pitch attitude looks like. Okay, we're 90 right now. We said we were going to do these at 85 or 80. I think we'll do them at 85. And we know it's going to be pretty much full power, right? So I'm retrimming the airplane. Okay, 85, clear left, clear right, going to the left. All right, rolling in full power. Okay, all right, I'm established in the steep turn. Ooh, a little off the ball. Okay, and here we are, we're going around, we're at 3,000 feet, and I've got a little black spot on the cowling there, and we see that if the nose comes down here, we start to descend. If the nose is up here, we start to climb, right? So that's me yawing around. But then we can also see, okay, there's too low on the pitch. There's too high on the pitch, right? And so I see this a lot on steep turns. We're out there and we're just going up and down and all around, and the pitch attitude is just doing this back and forth because the student's trying to make the altimeter behave or the bank angle behave or something, right? They're focused inside, and they're chasing results rather than driving the scenario by setting pitch, right? So I'm going to get back into it. Okay, there we go. There's my picture. Okay, I'm slightly climbing, so I drop. I've got a little black dot on the dash, so I drop that dot. And we start descending. And you can find that just moving the dot up and down roughly half an inch on the horizon is enough to control the airplane. Whoop. I'm in my own wake. Okay. Come on, get on the ball. There we go. Okay. Not the greatest, but point made. Okay. Now let's go to the right. So we'll look at that to the right. Get coordinated, get back on speed. Right, get the power back out. Now you notice I've been going around and around, not just doing 360s. You can do that, but as I said, you're going to get into your own wake if you get any bit low at all. So you have to be careful doing that. Right, and then also getting into the maneuver, I can tell pretty quickly what your relationship with pitch and power is, depending on how quickly we can get to the desired airspeed and altitude. And that's another thing, just a general point with performance maneuvers, is that performance maneuvers, to be consistent, need to be started from the exact same conditions, right? Same airspeed, same altitude, all that stuff. I see so many started 10 knots slow, 10 knots fast, 100 feet high, 100 feet low, and then they wonder why the numbers aren't working out, right? So we gotta just lock them in, right? So we're 85 and 30-20 right now, or maybe just a hair high, right? Okay, I got the power back configured. Let's go to the right and look at the pitch picture there. Okay, rolling in, too much rudder. Okay, coming into it, climbing. Okay, got my bug. I've got my bank. Right, I've got my spot on the cowling. It's up here on the far left corner that I'm dragging around the horizon. And I'm climbing in slow so I can lower the pitch slightly. Starts coming back. There we go. Coming into it, maybe slightly shallow. Okay, too much power because altitude is stable and airspeed is slightly high. Okay, and now I pull the nose up. We start to climb. Right, we push the nose down. And airspeed accelerates rapidly, right? And so we just want to lock in the pitch picture, lock in the bank, and just drag it around, right? I should be able to take a picture with the camera multiple times in your steep turn, and the picture should look exactly the same relative to the horizon, right? So focus more outside than inside, especially to begin. Okay, now how can you do that? How can you force yourself to do that? Well, cover up the gauges, right? A lot of my private students, we never even look at the instruments, right? I've got them all covered up, and we're out doing steep turn after steep turn, stalls, whatever, with 0 instruments, right? If the houses get bigger, we know we're going down, right? We can tell which way we're pointed because it's the Midwest, and the roads are square, and we got the sun and other things, right? But a steep turn, you don't need gauges to do a steep turn. Baloney. Just cover them up and do them, right? And so when you do that, what you're learning to do is to just make a stable condition, right? So who cares if you're slightly climbing or slightly descending, you know, or you're fast or slow or what have you. Just learn to draw a steady picture just like we can do here in level flight, right? If you can't do that, good luck trying to make all this work, right? Okay, so next up is going to be locking variables. We talked about that a little bit. Let me get back down to my condition here. And I don't want to get too far from home, so I'm going to make a turn to the right, clear right. Okay, coming back down to 3,085. Okay, eastbound here. So, let's try the steep turn with varying bank angles to control altitude. It's going to be ugly, but let's do it anyway, right? Because it will not cease to persist. I don't know, does that make any sense? It keeps persisting as a problem that people think this is like a good idea or something. So let's just prove it wrong right now. Okay, we're level, we're 87, slightly high. That means we have too much power, so we take power out slightly. Okay, so we're going to roll in to the left, bump the power. Okay, and we get in. And for whatever reason, we're off the ball or we're not pulling the right amount, and then we start to descend. Okay, well then we roll out. Okay, and the airplane starts to climb, and then the ball's out because we're not coordinating right. That's another side effect. And then we roll in now because we're too high. And now we're going down and the airspeed's picking up. Oh no, well, I don't want to pull. I'm scared to pull, so I roll out, right? And this is ugly, right? So this is not how you should do it, right? Because you're not locking the bank. The point is to lock the bank. That's the whole point, right? So let's do it to the right like that. Okay, and what I find is that most people do this roll in, roll out nonsense because they're too afraid to pull, right? So, yeah, not good. And then, oh my goodness, we're way fast. And now we're on altitude, so now we roll out, and I'm afraid to pull. Right, you have to pull. You have to pull. Right? If you're afraid to pull, well then you can't do the maneuver because the maneuver requires G-force, right? So this is obviously not the way to do it. So do not vary your bank angle. Lock the bank angle. You just now fixed one of your variables, right? If you lock the bank angle, well now you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's one less thing you have to worry about. And why does it make things so messy? Well, it's because once the airplane is no longer wings level, everything gets a say in altitude, right? So right now, the only thing that gets a say in altitude is pitch and power, right? If I yaw the airplane or I roll slightly, that doesn't have any much effect in pitch and power, or in airspeed and altitude. But if I get the airplane into a steep turn here, and I didn't lock my conditions in before I started because I'm just trying to make a demonstration here. But okay, so we're going around, and then I try to roll in, right? Well, the problem is if I roll in, I have to coordinate it. Most people don't coordinate. And then we also mess up the out airspeed too, right? So when you roll in, well, you just change the vertical behavior of the maneuver, because when you're in a bank angle has a vertical say, right? So lock that bank angle in, right? Lock it in. If you got an attitude indicator, don't even let it off the 45-degree tick mark. Just lock it in. Okay? Next thing we got to do is coordination. We got to lock the coordination in. And this, I think, is the biggest problem with steep turns, period. Bad coordination. Now, why do I know that? Because when I put people in the king air, or I go to the sim for the citation, and we turn that magical little yaw damper on, they get easy, right? The maneuver gets very easy. And that's because there's a little electronic box back there making sure that the side slip stays 0, right? But we don't have that in our Cessna 172s, our Cherokees, or our Luscombes. So we are the yaw damper, right? We're the system keeping the ball in the middle. And so now let's do some steep turns and screw up the coordination. And you're going to see real quick why coordination is the most important, in my opinion, most important sub-problem to solve with steep turns. So here we are at 85, 3,000 feet. And I'm going to demonstrate, first of all, what typically happens, which is dead feet, right? So I'm not going to use any aileron or any rudder rolling in. And so the ball drops, right? And then, I didn't add my power, sorry. Okay, now we're going around. And now the problem with this is many-fold. The first of all is that the airplane is now slipping around the turn, right? And slips are safe. We've talked about that in other maneuvers. But it's messing up the forces that are making this work, right? It's also adding drag, so that's not good. And so we can see that the ball is just hanging out here, right? And now the problem is that let's say the student notices that, or the instructor notices it, tells the student to fix it. What happens when I yaw the airplane? Let's find out. Oh! Right? The rudder now has a say in the vertical, and the nose drops. Right? Because when we're wings level, left rudder, right, it only has a horizontal say. It doesn't have a vertical say. Right? And so once we try to kick that rudder back in place with just our feet, which we don't want to do that, but if we do it, well then the airplane knifes down into the turn and it gets ugly. So let's see what you would have to do to avoid that, right? Because it rolled the airplane in too, because yaw couples into roll, right? So we're coming back down here. And yeah, let's see what happens when we do it correctly, right? So we're gonna, well, first of all, we're gonna screw up the coordination, right? So I'm not gonna apply any rolling in, right? I add my power. We're going around. Right now, how do I fix this correctly? Let's say you get to this point and you're like, shoot, what do I do? Well, as we learned with coordination, you can move the ball with both the rudder and the stick. So in this case, I'm gonna have to apply right rudder, left aileron, and a little back pressure. Right, there's the solution. It's a threefold solution, right? If the ball is out, you got to use the stick and the ball and the back pressure to make it behave, right? So let me uncoordinate it, right? And the more you uncoordinate this maneuver, the less you have to pull. So people obviously like that because they don't like the G-force, right? So we're going around, right? So if I don't use the stick here, we'll just roll in even tighter. So right rudder, left stick, and a little more back pressure, and we solve the problem. Okay, now we're going around nice and smooth, coordinated. Okay, we'll roll out to the south here. Okay, now, worse yet, let's look at too much rudder. This is extremely rare. This almost never happens because most people have dead feet, right? If you want to know about dead feet, go watch my coordination video. Okay, and so now we're going to go to the left, and I'm going to use too much rudder. And now this is spooky because this is driving the nose down into the turn, and then we're pulling back and the G-force comes up. Right, that's not right. So in this case, we need right rudder, maybe a little left stick, and ease the back pressure. Right, but that almost never happens. Okay, so how can you improve on this? Well, the first thing you can do is do rolls on heading, which we've talked about in other videos. I won't bore you. You can go back and watch the coordination video. But this is basically where we learn to move our feet with the stick, right? And so if the ball stays in the middle, right, it's behaving, then we're moving our feet as we're rolling in and out of the maneuver, right? So we got to warm our feet up. That's problem number one, okay? Then we've got to be able to do the maneuver and keep the ball in the middle. And that's two separate skills. So we can build them separately. And so what I like to do is a student's flying and we're doing steep turns, and I'll just take the rudders and I'll have them pull their feet back, right? And then I'll take the rudders, and then I will do whatever it takes to keep the ball in the middle. And let me tell you, it's a disaster the first time, right? Because now the coordination is being enforced. There's a yaw damper involved, right? And so if we're enforcing that, well, now you have to pull the right amount of G-force with the stick to make the maneuver happen. And so it forces the student to do the maneuver correctly, okay? So let's do a steep turn to the left. And let's say I'm the student and I've got my feet back and the airplane rolls in. Well, then as the instructor, I'm going to kick the ball to keep it in the middle, right? And, right, so I'm going to be working my feet, and then the student's going to be doing this with the stick because they're not in tune with what I'm doing with the rudder. But eventually they figure it out, and they learn how to keep the bank angle locked in and to keep the back pressure in. But yeah, so that's something you can do. Then what you do is then you as the instructor take the stick, and the student runs the coordination, right? Or maybe you're up with a friend, you're trying to do this. Maybe you're up with a safety pilot or a friend of yours. Well, you can have them do the ailerons and the power, and you can just focus on the rudder. And what you'll find is that as you roll in, you put rudder in as you roll that direction. Once the rolling is stopped, we're roughly neutralizing our feet. And then as we roll out, we're putting in rudder with the direction of roll to keep the airplane coordinated, right? And so then you can learn to do both, and then things get a lot cleaner, right? And I've talked about this in other videos, but we end up with what we call hang, lag, shoot when we aren't using enough rudder rolling in and rolling out. So what do I mean by hang? Well, the adverse yaw hangs the nose, hang, right? We're banked and we're not turning. And then once I get enough bank on the airplane, well, okay, it starts turning. And we're going around, and the ball is out, and it feels awful. And then I'll just roll out to the south here, and as I roll out to the south, the nose shoots. Woo! You can see it shot out that way, right? I call that hang, lag, shoot, because the nose hangs, or goes the opposite way, right? And don't tell me your 172 or Cherokee doesn't do this, because it does. And then it shoots out. It just might not be as violent as the Luscombe here. Right, so go find hang, lag, shoot in your airplane, and then don't let that happen, right? So how do we know if we're using the rudder correctly? Well, as we roll in, the nose should start sweeping immediately. There should be no hang, okay? And then when we roll out, the nose should not overshoot the target. We just, whoop, right? The turn stops as the bank angle comes out, right? And so that's good. Okay. And then the next thing is locking power. We already talked about that to some extent. We got to find the RPM that corresponds to the airspeed that we want to do the maneuver at. And we already found the maximum there, and so you want to get that. And so ideally, if you are locking all these things in, you're reducing variables, which then, if you're high or low, literally just comes down to pushing and pulling, right? And, and then pitch and, well, let me rephrase that. Pitch and power are then like they are in level flight, right? So if you have too much power on, right, you could be too high and or too fast, you're going to have to reduce power, right? But if you're high and slow, well, that's just a pitch problem. Push forward, accelerate, and descend, right? So then our normal pitch and power stuff comes into effect. But if we're letting the bank angle wander and we're letting the rudder and the coordination wander, all bets are off. All bets are off to making a good steep turn, right? Okay, so what does this look like in practice with the student? Well, I try to get them time. Time is such a valuable thing we have in aviation. We don't have enough of it. We never have enough, right? We're hurry, 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 right? And so a steep turn, let's time it. Get my timer up here. Oh, where be thou? It went away. There it is, timer. Okay. Okay, let's time a steep turn and see how long it takes. Okay, we're 90 and 3,000. We know we can do it right at 90 if we hang on to full power. Okay, and we're going to go to the right. Clear left, clear right. Start. Full power, rolling in. Okay, we started on the south. We're going to go to the south. There's west, climbing, slow, nose down. There's north, coming back into airspeed, coming back into altitude. A little shallow on the bank. There's east, and there's south. 27 seconds, right? Okay, so let's say you go out and do, I don't know, 4 or 5 steep turns. Yay, your student just got 2.5 minutes of practice. Yay, right? They spent all that money for 2.5 minutes of practice? That's pretty sad, right? So we need to get them more time. We need to spend more time. And to do that, I like to do a sustained steep turn, right? So we're south here, 3,000 feet coming into it. Reduce power, that'll let me pull back and slow down a little quicker, come back into 85. Right, there's 85, right? And so we're going to do a sustained steep turn to the left. It is very, very, very important that we do not get low. And if anything, you might even allow just a very gentle climb while you're doing this. It's not the checkride standards, but that's not the point. It's a learning exercise, okay? So we're 33,000 and roughly 85 here at 2,100 RPM. Going to the left. Adding my power. Okay, and I don't want to start out low here. Okay, and there's north. All right, and we're just going to go around. All right, we're just going to go around. And the cool part about this is if we're just going around and we're not getting low down in our own wake, we can just keep going and going and going. And now the student gets time. Right, now they can focus on their G-force, they can focus on their sight picture, they can focus on their coordination. Right, I'm a little off my coordination here. So just give it a little rudder. There we go, okay, I'm 30, 50, 87, slightly speeding up. Right, and now if I'm not worried about east, north, south, west, right, I'm not worried about all the headings, I'm not worried about the rolling in and the rolling out. Right, there I hit my own weight because I got a little low. Right, get reestablished here. Then I actually have time to learn the maneuver. And the wake is even a good thing in some sense because, hey, it's something you have to fight through. It's something you have to, you know, if you hit it every now and then, you kind of have to roll with the punches, you know, which is good practice. So around we go, and I'm slightly high, slightly fast, so I can reduce power ever so slightly, and I'm slightly off the bank angle. I don't want to get low, right? And so now here, if the student stomach will allow, you can build a lot of intuition and experience right here, because we're not worried about the mechanics and the logistics of the checkride maneuver itself, right? Okay, so around we go, 85, slightly high, and that's okay. We said we might climb slightly as we do this, right? But now I can actually work on, hey, is my coordination right? Is my pitch and power together, right? Well, now I'm slightly slow and high. I probably need just a slight bit of power. Okay, I'm slightly off my bank angle. I can fix that. All right, and now we have time to actually build the skill that's underneath the steep turn. right? We're going around and going around. Now, then what I like to do is we're established in this. I like to have the student try to lift their hand or lift their legs, right? And just sitting in a chair here, you know, pulling 1.41 Gs, you might forget what, you might not even really notice the G-force. But if you have to lift your legs, oh yeah, you find out pretty quickly the G-force is there, right? So you can do that both directions. And that just gives you time to learn the maneuver rather than, you know, north, east, south, west, rolling out, you know. There's just too much going on in the maneuver. Now it's funny, in the citation where I go for my recurrent, they always want you to do 180-degree steep turns because the check ride for the ATP allows that. And that's even worse because you have barely any time. By the time you get rolled in, you check that you made a 90-degree turn, and then you're thinking about the rollout. So it's really just the roll in and the roll out. It's not much of a check, you know, which is unfortunate. But they're always in a hurry. They're trying to get people through. So convenience gets in the way, right? And so around we go to the right, right? And why? Because you get so little time in the simulator each year anyway. You want as much practice as you can get, right? So there, now I'm established, and there's west. And now I'm already thinking about the rollout. I barely had any time to practice. I didn't have any time to practice, right? Because I was rolling in and I was rolling out. Yes, I kept the aircraft under control, or I kept it within tolerance, but that doesn't mean you can actually make it do it with comfort and confidence and just sustain what you're trying to do, right? Okay, so we got that. We looked at the limits of power and the 180-degree steep turn. Let's talk a little bit about trim, right? Some people swear by trim and steep turns. Some people don't. They think you shouldn't use trim at all. I'm of the opinion you can do either one, right? If you want to pull, okay. If you want to trim, okay. But, you know, some people will have a rule, like we'll swipe 3 swipes of trim on a Cessna 172 or something like that. That can work, right? I try to trim for the situation, right? And, you know, you might develop that rule of thumb, but I'm still trying to feel the pressure in the stick. So let's see. I haven't actually tried recently to see if we can trim the Luscombe to do a steep turn on its own. We're here at 30, 40, and 95. We're too fast, so we reduce the power. That allows us to pull back without losing altitude. Set 2100 again. I got slow. I overshot it. I was exaggerating to prove the point. Okay, 85, 30, 40. Okay, we're gonna go to the left. Clear left, turn and left. Okay, watching my sight picture as I roll in. Rudder, add power. Okay, and I'm pulling a little bit, so now I'm gonna start rolling in trim. Little rudder. Altitude, I'm a little fast, but I'm a little low, and I'm off the ball a little bit. There we go. I've got full nose-up trim in, and the Luscombes are known for having notoriously weak trim. And yeah, it's just barely pulling enough for me, right? And now I have very light stick force. Now I can really focus on what I'm doing, and I got low. And now I got into my wake, and see it's trying to roll out, woohoo, of the wake. And around we go, we got back out of that. But yeah, so the Luscombe will just barely trim enough for you to do the steep turn on your own. The problem is, let's see what happens if I don't take the trim out and I roll out and I push forward and I'm like, okay, everything looks good, and then I let go. Wow, really starts to climb, right? It's a lot of trim. Okay, so you got to be smooth on the trim, and you can't be mechanical. And I see that a lot, right? The trim has to come in at the right time, right? And the power has to come in at the right time, right? Because the power and the trim are dependent on the bank and the pull. So you can't just swipe in the trim and add the power and then maybe roll in or something, because that's just going to be a mess, right? You have to pull back and you have to add power as the maneuver requires, right? And so We're coming back into target here, 85 and 3,000 feet. Right, and so that's something I see that people are just trying to do it off of procedure rather than off of feel. And the only way to do it successfully is off of feel, right? If you start pulling or adding power too early or trim, it's just going to be a nightmare, right? So let me talk about that as I roll into this one. Okay, so I'm rolling in as the bank gets steeper, I'm pulling back, right? And I'm adding power as we go. Right, so I put it on in because it needed it, not because the procedure said to do it in any particular order. Now that doesn't mean procedure order doesn't matter, it does. But, right, basically the farther back you pull the stick, right, the steeper you bank, the more you pull the stick back, the more you add the power, right? Because the pulling the stick back is making more induced drag, which you then have to counter with the power, right? So there's that. Now, let's say we are going to look inside, right? Where are we going to look inside? Well, primarily these three gauges, right? Altitude, airspeed, and ball, right? Hopefully you're seeing the bank angle now over the nose, and you're not having to look at the attitude indicator constantly because you're locking in your sight picture, right? But I think that the altimeter is one of the best and most helpful instruments in a steep turn. I would even look at it before I looked at the airspeed, right? So I keep the ball in, I'm getting my sight picture over the nose, and then I take a glance at the altimeter and I look, what is it doing? Well, it's just barely drifting down, so I can pull back a little harder. I can change my sight picture. Check the ball. Okay, altimeter is still a little low. Okay, so I pull back some more. I raise the sight picture and I add power. Altimeter starts doing this, starts coming back up to 3,000, well then I can reduce power, right? And I'm watching for trends, right? I'm looking exactly where is it pointed and is it moving? Is it moving fast or slow? And even when you're losing the maneuver, right? If your maneuver's falling apart and you're climbing or descending, it's still not moving very fast. So you're trying to kind of just, you know, every time you look at it, you're trying to remember, where was it the last 3 times I looked at it? What's the trend? Was it at 30-20 or 30-40? You know, was it halfway between 30-20 and 30-40, right? You're trying to look with detail and remember into the past where it was, and that'll tell you if the pitch is just slightly too high or just slightly too low or something like that. Okay? So maybe if you do look inside every now and then, those 3 gauges could help you out. Okay, so I hope you found this useful. I'm going to start heading back towards Wahoo, and you're welcome to come along with me. We're just going to full stop it. I got to get back to work with some students here, but you're welcome to drop out now if you want, or you can come along back with me. Let me make a radio call here. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 77903's 8 miles to the northwest, inbound 02 Wahoo. Okay, so yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. If you dislike the video, hit the dislike button twice, not once. Anywho, if you want to talk about your training journey, if you have questions, if you are in Nebraska and you want flight training, or if you want to do virtual ground school, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. You can reach me through there, make a connection request, and then send me a message. Just search my name on there. But yeah, thanks for coming along. I hope you found this useful. Please be nice in the comments and let me know your experience with steep turns, what's helped you, maybe what this video has helped you with, or maybe it showed you there's something interesting you can go add to your repertoire in developing your steep turns. And so I hope you found that useful. Anywho, so we're headed down here to pattern altitude, 2,200 feet. We're finally in crop duster season here. They're finally spraying more. It's been a really quiet year for the crop dusters so far here in Nebraska. So haven't seen them too much, but they're starting to come out. So we're going to keep an eye on them. They're busy. We're going to come in here and join a left downwind for 02 at Wahoo on the 45. And last time I talked about getting down to the right altitude, looking for traffic, so I won't belabor that. But what's something else we can talk about? We've talked about traffic pattern entries before and the importance of doing the teardrop entry correctly, right, if you want to call it that. Anywho, we'll just start heading back in here. I really need to get out and start doing some approach and landing videos with this. I think that would be useful. I haven't really thought through exactly how I want to do that yet. But hey, if you've got some ideas on something you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments, and we'll look at doing it, right? So the one thing I really want to focus on with approach and landing is really talking a lot about tuning the power off glide, right? That is one of my obsessions, is understanding and practicing and honing the power off glide so that we always have options. And there's more to it than I originally thought. There's a lot to it, actually. It's its own art form in and of itself, right? And that factors into emergencies. It factors into the power off 180 landing, which, by the way, came about from emergencies, right? And engine outs, right? And so we might spend a couple lessons doing that. Who knows, maybe I'll just go out and do a bunch and talk through them as I go. I might do more than one video. Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I need to get some side cameras so that you guys can look out the windows with me. That would be helpful. Okay, let me make a radio call. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 77903's 2 to the northwest, joining left downwind on the 4502 Wahoo. Okay. Oh, here's an interesting one we could talk about here. It's funny, people, I had someone comment and say that I used the word departing instead of takeoff when I took off out of Wahoo on a video. And how at a towered airport you would never say departing because you're clear for takeoff. Well, that's true at a towered airport. But at an untowered airport, there's nothing in the AIM that says you have to use certain phraseology, and right, so that's something I find funny. People, and I'm highly guilty of this myself, assuming that the way they're doing it is the right way, right? And the thing that, you eventually realize with all this stuff, the FAA puts out some stuff, but there is a whole lot of room for ambiguity, right, and different ways to do things and still be inside formal guidance on how you're supposed to do this stuff, right? The FAA does not mandate every single word of every single call, so, for the longest time it aggravated me to death that people were saying turning in their call. Well, in my opinion, it didn't really add anything. I mean, maybe it does, you kind of have an idea, okay, they're not halfway down the downwind, they're in the beginning of the downwind. But, right, I didn't have anything in the FAA documents that I could cite to say, see, you're doing this wrong. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's left downwind, turning base, 02 Wahoo. Okay, I got my crop dusters on the ground in sight there. They're not started up yet, looks like. So yeah, gotta have a little charity for folks because, it's not all spelled out. And it's even funny, you move from different regions in the country and you'll hear different things. You'll hear, they'll make the same call kind of the same way depending on where you're at. So it's highly dependent on just local culture even to some extent. Okay, we're on base here. We're trimmed, power out, idle, got oil pressure. Base is clear, or final is clear, sorry. Okay, I feel a little low. I'm going to turn in just a little bit. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's turn at final 02, full stop Wahoo. Even I say turning now sometimes too, even though I didn't like it earlier. Okay, we're clear. Alright, the glide's feeling pretty good. Our target is the numbers. Okay, if anything, slight left to right crosswind. Ooh, got a lot of sink here at the end. Wait. And a little pull, and oh, we're going to turn it into a 3-point. Okay. Oh yeah, I haven't landed in a week or two. Not the prettiest. Okay, and we're going to roll it out to the taxiway, next taxiway, right? Because the FAA says they don't want us turning around on runways at untowered airports if there are taxiways, right? If there aren't any taxiways, well, then you kind of have to. But and why? Because if someone's landing behind you, Nordo, and you turn around, someone's doing something stupid, you might turn around into someone, right? So we can't control other people, unfortunately. So I've added the time to taxi down instead of turning around. But hey, you never know. Might turn around someday if I kept doing it and someone be right there in my face. Don't want that. Okay, a little fast coming into the turn here. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903s, clear all runways at Wahoo. Okay, well, I'm going to taxi in here. Nice to have an overcast day, maybe cut down on the heat a little bit, cut down on the brightness. I didn't even put my sunglasses on. Reset the trim. I feel. Keep my eyes outside, don't want a ground loop. Oh. Oh, goodness. Oh, it's early. Anywho, yeah. Hopefully we'll start working on some approach and landing stuff in the next few videos. Thanks for your patience. For those of you who watch consistently, I know I don't post consistently. Work does not allow that, unfortunately. But we get out when we can. And we're clear left, clear right. Wahoo traffic, Luscombe 903's crossing 1331 Wahoo. Okay, and as I cross the final hold short line, fuel comes off. And coming into the spot here, gonna make sure we avoid the pothole. Famous Wahoo pothole here. There we go. And we'll see when it dies. Ugh. Alright, thanks everyone for coming along. Enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. We'll talk to you next time. Come on. Any day now. There she goes. Alright, we'll see y'all later.